Welcome back to the Lost Leisures. It has been forever, it feels like.
4 weeks.
It's been
Four?
4 years since we've done this.
It's been 87 years.
Of course, last time was 2 weeks ago. I just realized I never actually uploaded the YouTube video for that one. So I guess we're gonna have a double upload next
So
time.
look up for that this week.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of treats in store for you this week when we finally finish the stuff that we reviewed 2 weeks ago and post that on social media and post the YouTube video of that week's content and the YouTube video of this week's content. It's just going to be an embarrassment of riches for all of our many fans this week.
You're welcome.
Hell yeah. We might finish the things that we reviewed 2 weeks ago.
We
will definitely finish the things we reviewed today. That's for sure.
I
don't know about the things that...
really hard. We'll try really hard.
We have made literally no... Well, it started off on a bad foot because we missed someone that podcast. And the other person who was there for like the post podcast review was like in the middle of driving and couldn't actually visually review anything.
Right.
And then after that, no one said anything about it at all. So
I do want two things to be noted. One, I have been thinking about it, and two, I did write 8 pages of content for it. So
that's fair. Though that 8 pages of content was over like a couple of years of work, or like a year.
Yes.
How old is that?
Like 2 years old.
2 years? That sounds about right. Anyway, so we're back to do some spells. Back to the classics. Specifically, we are going to cover the rest of the spells that we did not cover in our spooky spells episode, plus an additional spell that Zach put together for this week. So we're going to go ahead and really jump into that, unless there was something you guys wanted to say before we did anything.
Hi.
Yeah, welcome back to Zach. Been a few weeks since he's been here. I don't have anything to say like I always do. I'm saving my word of the day until the end of the show.
Hell yeah.
I hope it starts with a P this week.
It better start with a P. All right. Well, the first spell we have here is Zach's spell. I figure since he wasn't here in the last podcast, he might as well just go ahead and start us off here. Especially since he made this spell fairly recently, so it'd be fresh in his mind.
It is.
Go ahead.
It is called Dancing Radiance, 5th level evocation, cleric, paladin, sorcerer, casting time and action, range 120 feet, verbal, somatic, and material, ashes of a blessed torch, duration 1 hour. You create 4 balls of hot radiant light filling up 1 5-foot square. Each ball emits bright light out to a range of 40 feet. As a bonus action, you can move them up to 30 feet. If a ball moves into a space already occupied, the target must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 3d8 radiant damage, or half as much on a successful save. Once a ball does damage in this way, it dissipates and burns away, and it goes up by 1d8 each level that you cast it higher.
Cool. So this is like a combination of dancing lights and flaming sphere.
Yep, it's supposed to be enhanced dancing lights, basically.
Hell yeah.
So a language thing. When you say if a ball moves into a space already occupied, I think you could just say if a ball moves into a creature's space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that works.
And then also you wouldn't need to say target then. Just if a ball moves into a creature's space, that creature must make a dexterity saving throw. Although I think that would actually be that creature makes a dexterity saving throw.
Yeah, I didn't get so hung up on like the wordage.
And that's totally fine. It's an evocative spell that does what it says on the tin. And so I wanted to just take that little quick pot shot at the language before I tell you how much I like the idea behind this.
Small quibble on Adam's language. You don't say makes a saving throw. It's must make a saving throw. It's always must make.
Okay, I wasn't sure of that. That one I was unsure of because I don't personally like that auxiliary verb there. But
as for like the actual balance of the spell, I think there's a couple of things here that maybe are missing. I think this maybe should be concentration. I think Dancing Lights itself is already concentration, I believe.
Is it?
The light cantrip is not, but Dancing Lights is.
Right.
So it's interesting. This spell is taking the form of both a utility spell and a damaging spell, which is why it has the hour duration. Because it's supposed to be, like you said, enhanced Dancing Lights. So the 40-foot bright light is supposed to be like a main feature of this spell, not just like a ribbon on top of its damage.
Yeah.
So the hour still makes sense. I mean, there's not much more you can get out of a spell in combat that lasts an hour than it lasting a minute with concentration.
Yeah.
So not the biggest deal, and they're limited out to 120 feet, which is fine.
Well, 120 feet when you place them, but you can move them once the spell's been cast.
Yeah.
Which is
True,
actually
you
something
could
I
move them
wanted-
out.
Which is something I wanted to actually ask about. It says as a bonus action you can move them up to 30 feet. Is it supposed to be as a bonus action you can move each of them? Or as
Yeah.
a bonus action you can move one of them?
It is supposed to be each.
Okay, so you can move all 4 of them
Yes.
on each of your turns. Okay. Let me double check something real quick. I think that it's fine that you can move all 4 of them. I like that. One thing that I was thinking about was that maybe as it scales, in addition to increasing the damage, maybe you like on alternate levels increase the damage or increase the number of spheres.
I could do that.
I don't think that's strictly necessary. It's just that feels like the most natural way for it to scale to me.
Adding a sphere does add quite a bit of damage.
That's the thing. That increases the damage by 20%.
Well, so that's something I was going
25.
to address. Is that
Yeah.
the amount of damage
It's quite a bit of damage.
the amount of damage this does should be compared to like an AoE spell, and if even if you add an additional light, it would add a lot of damage if you use it in combat, but it wouldn't add any more damage than like a well placed fireball, and fireball does a lot more damage. It is a more resistant fire damage type, but it is also fireball.
Well,
so, I mean,
if you hit one target with all 4 of these on one turn, it is 12d8.
that is true. That is
right.
true.
That's the and that's a little high
Yeah.
for a 5th level spell, but I don't think that's a crazy amount of damage for a 5th level spell. It's definitely a very good 5th level spell if you proc all of them on one creature on the first turn. I don't know where I was going with that sentence. It definitely sounded like there was supposed to be a second half of that, but my brain just totally lost track.
I think I would want to make it so that you have to place them a certain distance away from each other if that's able to be worded. Only because I don't want you to be able to put them all right on top and then hit them like right away.
I feel like the wording necessary to make that clear would be very fiddly.
Although it is a save for each of them.
That's the thing. It's a save for each of them, and save halves. I don't think it's really that crazy for it to do 12d8 damage. Well, and you're burning a 5th level spell slot and concentrating on it for a turn.
Yeah, I would add concentration for sure.
You know what? You know what might help? Is say that you have to create the balls in empty spaces. So then you have to use your action and your bonus action to get it to go off on that first turn.
Yeah, that's. I'll have to add that because it's meant to do that.
If it's taking your action and your bonus action, I think it's fine that it deals a little bit more damage than a 5th level spell should. Because based on the guidelines in the DMG...
Because you do have to save against them all, so like there's a chance of you having everything.
Exactly. So based on the DMG, 44 is about the average damage you should expect from a single target, save for half spell at level 5. So 12d8 gives you 48 plus 6. That gives you 54, which is closer to the damage that you would expect from a 6th level spell, but you're spending an action and a bonus action to do it.
Mm-hmm. And it's multiple saves.
Right, and it's multiple saves, so it's expected that they'll save on some and not others. So like I think that that's fine as the single target thing. And as multi-target...
Yeah, originally I had it at 4d8, and I just 16d8 at level 5 was like, that's a little bit too...
Yeah, pulling it down to 3d8 I think is perfectly reasonable. I think this is... Well, and if you're doing it as 4 different targets, then
Yeah.
it's only 3d8 damage, which is
Exactly.
actually quite low for a 5th
Yeah, and
level spell.
I wanted
So
that option, but I didn't want that like it hitting one target to be insane if you're hitting multiple targets.
right. Well, that's the thing. Without fiddly wording, I don't think you're going to get this spell to the point where hitting
Yeah.
multiple targets is the correct play. But the current wording makes hitting multiple targets reasonable and hitting a single target pretty good.
And you
I
could hit
think
like
that's
one with 2 of them as well. So like it gives you a ton
Yeah.
of different options.
yeah, that's the thing. This is a super versatile spell in that you can well, and also you can leave one ball up, casting its
Yeah,
light,
exactly.
and hit creatures with the other 3. Like this spell has a lot of different modes,
Yeah.
including like 3 balls at one creature and 1 ball at another, or 2 at one, 2 at another. Like there's a ton of modes for this, and so I think that modality increases its power level above what the
Mhm.
strict numerical interpretation might give you. But even in the worst case, where this is dealing slightly over leveled damage to a target, it's costing your action and your bonus action to deal that damage. So I think that's okay. I don't think there's any precedent for that consideration, because I can't think of any spells in PHB or Xanathars that would require your action and your bonus action to get their full effect off in a single turn. But in
There,
principle, I think that it's okay.
kind of with Flaming Sphere takes your action then your bonus action, because it's an action to cast it, then bonus action to move it,
Yeah.
and you do the damage by ramming. But you can summon that on a creature, and or no, you can't summon that on a creature actually. So you have to move it to get the effect of it.
Mhm.
The
Yeah, because what I imagined with this was just my whole idea was just a later level like cleric or paladin, and you're going through a later level, larger scale dungeon, and instead of just having dancing lights at this point, you can like summon these and help you team walk through, and then if anything starts, you have these, so you can either keep the light up or just attack people with these like wards that you have almost.
Sure. Well, that's reasonable. I think that it's probably still more likely that you're just going to cast light
Mhm.
on everyone's weapons, but like this gives you another option that at least is defensible. But spending a 5th level spell slot in preparation
Yeah.
for a combat that might not happen is kind of a rough sell. If you're
Mhm.
only using this for the light, I don't think it does enough to justify its spell slot. But the light is a non-trivial bonus on
Yeah.
its combat applications. So
yeah, so I just searched through every 5th level spell to see if there were any comparable single target spells. There aren't. There's not a single spell that is solely a single target damage spell for comparison at 5th level. So I found that very interesting. I think the amount of damage it does to one target is perfectly fine. I think 12d8 of radiant damage. Radiant damage, of course, is a really good damage type, but I think either dividing it up, you're probably going to want to divide this up between at least 2 creatures. And also, if you're casting the spell for the purposes of, like, at least partly for the purposes of light, you don't want to use all of your spheres on one
Yeah, so
creature.
you have to save one.
So I think that's okay. I think if someone takes this spell, that's going to be the primary use, though, is to drop them all on one creature. Or 4, depending on the situation. I think it's going to be very rare that someone casts this expecting to use the light for anything very important. I do have one thing. Why is this granted to sorcerers and not to wizards?
Could be wizards. Sorcerers felt right in my soul, but I think I might just be thinking of like the healing sorcerer.
Yeah, there's
So,
the sorcerer that gets the entire cleric spell list.
yeah.
yeah. So I think Shawn's brought this up before. In general, when you design a spell, if it's not going on the wizard spell list, you kind of need to have a reason for that. Like kind of the default assumption for a spell, unless it is like fitting in a very small niche that other classes perform better than the wizard, the default assumption is that wizards will get access to it.
My main reason for not giving it to a wizard was just because it was radiant.
Oh, yeah. Well, they also wizards get spells like Dawn, for instance.
Mm.
They're not against getting that type of stuff. My big interest in this though is that it's explicitly flavored to be an enhancement on dancing lights,
Mm-hmm.
but not all the classes that get dancing lights get it, and some classes that don't get dancing lights do. So like cleric and paladin don't normally get dancing lights because clerics don't have cantrips. Though technically they could if they take the fighting style. Well, no, because clerics don't get it, so they can't get it at all. So if that's the key flavoring here is that it's like an enhanced power,
Yeah.
like powerful
Yeah,
dancing lights, it probably should match.
Yeah, you can change it to. I don't. That's fine. Yeah. Well, you could change it to fire damage from radiant if it doesn't match. Like if it's not going on clerics and paladins, then I don't even imagine it's radiant at that point. But I would have to like change the wording. But just because it was radiant, and I was thinking radiance was why I had clerics and paladins.
All right, there's still a couple spells that like wizards get that do radiant damage. Like I said, Dawn is a spell that wizards get from Xanathars.
Yeah, no, I believe you. Just when I think of radiant, I think of paladins and clerics.
No, definitely, because that's like, celestial and like good and evil, basically.
Yeah.
Which is a very divine thing to make spells about.
Was there anything else?
I think you hit the damage at just about the right spot.
Actually, one thing that I'm slightly concerned about is that with the scaling that you have proposed here, this spell actually scales really,
4d8.
really well as an upcasted damage spell. Yeah, I mean, it's not as good as like Meteor Swarm at 9th level, but like actually it puts up a fair comparison because it's 28d8 as a 9th level spell, which is not nothing. Like, so
I considered not even scaling it at first.
I think that scaling it every other level might be appropriate just because of
As a comparison, it's a 7th level spell, but Crown of Stars, for instance. Each star that first of all, you start off with how many stars is it? I think it's 7.
It was 7.
I'm 7 stars. And each of them do 4d12 damage. And for every slot, you get 2 more of those things.
Oh god. Okay, yeah, never mind. The scaling's fine. I think it might be I think the worst point for this is probably at level 6. At level 6, I think it outperforms significantly your other options. But at level 7, 8, and 9, there's just so many other better things to do. So
yeah. If you were worried about the scaling, I think it'd be appropriate to scale the number of balls versus the amount of damage. Because if you're doing this as a 1-turn all-in damage thing, that's effectively just increasing the damage anyway.
Right, and increasing the number of spheres gives you a 25% increase, whereas going up by 1d8 gives you a 33% increase.
It says balls, okay?
I know that it says balls, and I don't care for that, which is why I keep saying spheres.
You don't like my balls, Adam? Come on.
Zach, you know that I love your balls, but I think that I've been rethinking the text of this spell, and I was actually trying to come up with an alternative name for it, but
yeah, if you can, that's fine. I like dancing in there just because it is supposed to be an enhanced version.
The only thing I came up with, I'm pretty sure, is already a spell.
Dancing light flare.
No, the other thing that I came up with was scintillating sphere, which is already a spell.
Is it really scintillating sphere?
It might not be a spell in 5e, but I'm pretty sure it's a spell.
Oh, there's a few sphere spells. There's flaming sphere, Vichog sphere, freezing sphere, resilient sphere, watery sphere. There's a few spheres, and they all do that same thing. Or not all of them, but most of them do that same thing where you control a ball of something and move it around.
Okay, yeah. Oh, scintillating sphere, it looks like it's from 3.5.
I could just make it light sphere, but do you think if we do the scaling based on the balls, that the spheres that you make, should it go up each level by 1 or?
I think
'Cause
so.
I do like the idea of more
think that-
adding more
Yeah,
spheres.
I think that's fine. Well, and actually, when you do that, it's a smaller percentage increase with every passing level. So, like,
Mhm.
I think that's totally fine. The only
Yeah,
level
I
that
like
you
the idea
really,
of that better because it gives you more options. Even it feels.
yeah, the only level that you really have to worry about it at is going from 5 to 6, because then it's for dice, it's a 33% increase, and for balls, it's a 25% increase. But every level thereafter, it's a smaller and smaller percentage increase. So, and I think that, like we said, increasing the damage of each ball is dangerous at level 6, maybe, but increasing the number of spheres is totally fine, I think.
Yeah,
I like
I
that
think it,
skin.
I think it's fair for it to spike that much. Like, look at hold person. Hold person when you cast that third level increases its effectiveness by 100%
Yeah,
because you can target
that's
one
fair.
additional creature. And then each one after that obviously is less. But I think this is good as it is as far as the damage and stuff is concerned. I think it
Sweet.
should be concentration as Dancing Lights.
Yes. Oh,
But
yeah,
other
for
than
sure.
that, there's already verbiage in both Dancing Lights and Flaming Sphere, which fixes the like how it goes into creature spaces and where it starts and all of that we can just crib straight out of those. So
Yeah, exactly.
all
Yeah.
that's pretty easy to like get the wording down just so it fits perfectly within.
Yeah, I didn't really look it over. I wrote this in the car while I was helping somebody DoorDash. So, but it
Fair
came
enough.
to me, and I was like, I have to make it. So,
Hell yeah. All right, well, I think I'm pretty confident that we can move on from this one.
Yeah,
yeah, I'm happy with that.
I like this spell. I will admit, I was originally skeptical of the 120-foot range, but I like that you can spread them out pretty
Mhm.
far. So,
Yeah. All right, let's move on. I think my spell is next. Lurking Shadow. This is definitely supposed to be a spooky spell. 6th level Necromancy, Cleric, Warlock, Wizard. 1 action, 60-foot range. Verbal cinematic material. The material being a needle and thread. Duration until dispelled. You curse the shadow of a creature to spy on the creature at the cost of the creature's well-being. I said creature a lot in there. One creature of your choice within range will succeed in a charisma saving throw, or a shadow is summoned within 5 feet of the creature. The shadow is imperceptible by non-magical means, immune to all damage, moves with the creature, and is considered as equipment worn by the creature for any effects that target the creature. Anytime the creature regains hit points from rolling dice, they regain only the minimum possible result of the dice rolled. Additionally, the creature has disadvantage on ability checks, attack rolls, or saving throws using strength. Additionally, again, as an action, you can see through the shadow's eyes and hear what it hears until the start of your next turn, getting the benefits of any special senses the shadow has. During this time, you are deaf and blind in regard to your own senses. This spell cannot be dispelled by dispel magic or removed by remove curse spells. However, a successful dispel or remove curse spell ends the shadow's imperceptibility and removes all damage immunities it gains from this spell. The spell ends if the shadow is destroyed. And at higher levels, you can target one additional creature, and that do up to 4 shadows at once.
So thing number 1, when I feel tempted to say additionally twice in a row, I use furthermore for one of them. And the second thing is that this feels like an absolutely nasty thing for a DM to do to a player.
Hell yeah, it does.
But as something that's available to the players, I don't think it's actually that bad, because the players, barring some notable exceptions, probably aren't fighting the same person twice, like in the vast majority of scenarios. The only thing I might do to try and mitigate that is that, like, maybe make it a touch range instead of 60 feet, or maybe even just shorter than 60 feet.
This is not a combat spell. This is an espionage spell. You cast at somebody you want to spy on. This is a 6th level necrotic-based scrying spell. So you see that guy that you're suspicious of, and you put a fucking shadow on them.
It feels like it's also really good in combat, since it gives them disadvantage on attack rolls using strength. So
it does.
That's I would be tempted enough to use this in combat that I would want to shorten the range up a little bit.
There's definitely spells that have a long. Was it Raven Feeblement that does essentially that same thing? It does like half. It makes your damage half if you're using strength or something like that, which is a 1st level spell and is definitely not melee. Or I think it's a 2nd level spell.
Second level spell, 60 feet, deals half damage with weapon attacks that use strength until the spell ends. But it's also concentration up to a minute and not no concentration until dispelled.
Yeah, but this is also a 6th level spell.
I do think the attack rolls on that is a bit strong.
Maybe it's
Mm.
not. I mean, I guess
It would still be like there's better options to use.
well, and that's the thing. Even for control options, there's better things that a wizard can do at 6th level. Well, and like for warlocks, this would be a Mystic Arcanum. Honestly, this feels kind of out of place to me on the cleric spell list.
Yeah.
I don't know. Clerics are
I know they
think
get a lot of necromancy spells, but
yeah, clerics are straight up on the necromancy. What's the word I'm looking for?
this doesn't feel very cleric-y though.
I don't know. I mean, I think of like evil clerics. I think this is straight up an evil clerics like regimen. Why can't I spell enfeeblement?
Sure, but at that point, I feel like you've like specialized into being an evil cleric.
Well, I feel like this is the sort of spell that, like, I mean, 6th level, nobody gets those, but I feel like this is the sort of spell that shows up on a domain spell list. Like,
Yeah.
Why can't I spell enfeeblement?
ENFEEBLEMENT.
Anyway,
The spying of this spell is definitely strong.
Yeah, no, the spying is strong, but it's a 6th level spell, so like you can do a lot at 6th level.
Yeah.
I honestly I love this spell because like it gives you an interesting fail case of even once you dispel it, you still have to beat the shadow in combat.
Just to be clear, clerics get animate dead, bestow curse, blindness, deafness, create undead, gentle repose. Oh, that's not really that much of a life transference, speak with dead, spirit shroud. Like they are straight up on the necromancy. Like that is something that they are available to.
I'm not saying that clerics shouldn't have access to necromancy spells. I'm saying this spell does not feel like a cleric spell. I don't think that you should be determining solely based on the school.
I'm not basing it on the school. I'm basing it on the types of spells that they get within that school. Like straight
None
up.
of those seem to me to compare to the kind of what this one's doing. This one's very much more spy oriented than even like cleric oriented.
Well, cleric gets scrying as well.
Sure.
Right,
and clairvoyance and like all other kinds of divination spells.
Yes, but they aren't doing that via attaching a malevolent shadow to a person.
Because this is a unique spell specifically meant to do that. Of course they don't have another spell that does that.
Right, I'm saying that it is off theme for clerics in general.
But you can't point at the uniqueness of the spell to say it doesn't fit that spell list if they have no other spells that are like it.
I'm not saying the unique effect is what make it doesn't not fit a cleric. I'm saying that thematically, this isn't what clerics do.
But what's the theme that's being broken here? I don't understand. Because they create undead and they spy. This is both of those things tied into one. And they bestow curses as well. I don't know what theme we're breaking here with the cleric that they don't already have.
Okay, what theme does Fireball break for the cleric? Like,
well, clerics aren't usually meant to like evoke destruction. Like that's not really.
But they get what's the one that comes down with the column of flame that does the?
But that's divine smiting. It's not something that's meant to be a destructive spell. It's meant to be a smiting spell.
Okay, but how is that fundamentally different?
Mechanically, it's not. But
okay, and I'm not saying that what this mechanically does is something a cleric can't do. I'm saying that it thematically does not fit.
But what is the theme that's being broken?
And we've already said what we feel is not clerically about this. That it's you are summoning a malevolent shadow that attaches itself to a person, drains their energy, and spies on them.
But that's not addressing the theme that's being broken. You're just describing what the spell does. What theme is being broken?
You know what clerics are just as well as we do, Shawn. Like, that's
Right, and I don't see where the contradiction is in what they do with this spell.
okay. What can Fireball do that clerics can't?
It it calls upon the arcane forces of destruction. Clerics aren't.
Okay, right, but why couldn't a god of like fire and destruction do that?
It could. I mean, look, here's the thing. You guys are the ones who are pushing for the theme of the class being broken here. That's not something that I'm really like super invested in. But if you're going to push back in the spell based on its theming for the class, I'd want something more clear. Like, I don't see what attaching a creature to another creature has to do with what the cleric does or doesn't do compared to other classes. Because every piece of this spell is something that a cleric does. Creating an undead creature, bestowing a curse.
What I'm trying
scrying.
to say, Shawn, is that there is no like there is no exact thing I can point to and say this is the part of this spell that isn't a cleric thing. It's just that as a whole, it doesn't feel like it fits the cleric spell list. Just like Fireball doesn't feel like it fits the cleric spell list, even though in principle there's nothing wrong with it. If you were to reflavor the Fireball spell with no change to it mechanically, you could definitely argue for it as a cleric spell. And I think that there are ways that you could reflavor this that would make it feel, to me, a little bit more cleric-like. But the flavor isn't, you can't remove the flavor from the spell, especially in terms of which spell lists it goes on. Which spell list something goes on is super tied to flavor. Thematically, there's no reason why druids can't get Fireball, especially since they get Flaming Sphere. Like, there's no reason why a druid shouldn't be able to cast Fireball in terms of mechanics. But thematically, it feels a little off. And so it's not on their spell list. What I'm saying is that the spell list choice comes down to a lot of wishy-washy personal feelings about the class fantasy that you can't answer just by looking at individual pieces of the spell. You have to look at the big picture and sort of cross your eyes a bit.
Right. But when we start discussing, because I disagree about that theming for the cleric, and the only way we could possibly address that between each other in a way that we could possibly sway each other's opinions is by addressing things that exist in the game, how the mechanics work, and the flavoring of those things.
What I'm trying to say is that we are essentially arguing here about what the color red looks like.
I know. I know. And what I'm saying is we have a disagreement, right, about something that is ultimately subjective. But the only way that we can address anything like that when it comes to opinions about subjective things like this is by trying to appeal to something that exists objectively for both of us. And that's all I was doing by pressing the spell list and all of that.
Okay.
I look at this spell and I think, that's weird that it's on the cleric spell list. But okay. That's what my reaction would be if I saw this in a book printed out there. For me, I would be like, that's weird. But okay.
I mean, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I was just trying to explain my reasoning, and I felt like because it is a subjective thing, there was too much heat being put onto the fact that I chose to put this on the cleric spell list. So I was just trying to defend my reasoning about it, and how I could possibly express how I feel about the cleric.
Honestly, I am not really that concerned about the fact that it's on the cleric spell list. I was more upset by your arguments against, like, us feeling weirded out by that.
Hey, but, you were the one who was putting the fire on me to, about it being on the cleric spell list. And I was just trying to give my expression in some way that was objective to each of us. Like I said, this is a subjective matter that we can't, at a fundamental level, have an agreement about what the cleric means to us.
God damn it. Flame Strike. That is the name of the fucking spell that I was trying to think of. Fucking Flame Strike. Yeah. God damn it. Okay, yes. No, I get what you were trying to do it's a tactic that raises my hackles. So I apologize if
I
I brought a little
wasn't
bit more fire than is necessary.
I was just trying to express why I felt it was okay in the cleric spell list. I wasn't trying to say that like what you were saying didn't make any sense or anything like that. I totally get what you were saying, and I was just trying to explain in some objective way why I think it's okay to be in the cleric spell list.
What do you vote, chat?
Yeah, chat, tell us which spell list you think this should be on. I swear to God, if you say Paladin, I'll kick you.
Ranger?
I do think you're right in that the disadvantage on attack rolls might be a bit much because it does make it a bit too viable in combat versus ability checks and saving throws.
Yeah.
I was
think at that point though, you have so many better options that you could use.
Right, because like let's look at the 6th level control options for a cleric. We've got this is SRD. That's not going to help me. There's no good control options in SRD. Cleric spells. So like, what am I looking at? 6th level spells. Filter. Blade barrier. That's like very good at restricting movement.
it is.
Planar ally. Forbiddance. Honestly, yeah. Clerics have better stuff to do, and they don't even have a great control list. If we're looking at wizard spells, like
by the time
no
you hit 6th level,
contest.
if you're using this in combat, you're using it on the target that you want to spy on if he's getting away from you.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
The big thing with at least clerics, the other two wizards still kind of as well because they also prepare, though they have a little bit different preparing system.
Although that would, it's a 6th level spell. I would say that would slightly like concern me, like being able to offhand cast this as somebody's running away, just like as an action. But also, it's 6th level.
Yeah, you can do that with bestow curse as well, where you can force them to not move at all on their turn if you wanted.
Eye bite. One of the modes of eye bite gives disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. So yeah, this is probably fine as is.
Although I do think that this is not useless by players by any means. I think that there are lots of scenarios like what I'm talking about in general where a party that you're fighting is getting away and you want to like be able to like spy on them, and you can offhand at 6th level cast this and then you have a spy on them. Like,
right. So I didn't mean to imply that this is useless for the players. I meant that it is not nearly as nasty for the players to use on an NPC as it is for an NPC to use on the players. If a DM cast this on a PC, I would feel the need to have words with them. Like, I think that this is a bit much for something that you put on a PC.
Yeah, my one thing I think that is the hit points being at the lowest. I feel like maybe you could roll a die to subtract from the hit points that they gain back.
Or maybe even if they just don't get their con mod on the hit dice, instead of not getting the minimum guaranteed.
Because lowest does feel really bad, especially if it was cast on a PC.
The issue I have with doing, well, first of all, I don't think it's that bad because if we bring Chill Touch to its logical extreme as an improved spell, this is worse than that. Chill Touch for one turn, you can't regain any hit points at all. That's a cantrip. If you turn that cantrip to a 5th level spell, it's gonna be nastier than this.
Right, but I think it's telling that there is no spell that Wizards has designed that has that effect over a long duration.
True. Though part of Wizards not designing a spell is that they just haven't decided to go into that design space, and not necessarily always just because they thought it was unwise to do that. But that can only be played out in character. But what I was gonna say about the rolling a die to reduce how much HP comes back is that would require, if the players were to do this on an NPC, that the DM be like, okay, I need you to roll this die now. And the player's like, what? and they'd have to do that every time that NPC got HP. Now, generally, you probably don't have to worry about that too much because, like, you're probably, as the DM, not putting your NPC in a bunch of harm's way when the PCs aren't around.
Well, and also this only affects short rest health regain. So
You can also just have the creature roll the die. Like it doesn't have to be the player that cast it. Like
if I was a
when
player,
the
if I was a
creature-
player and I cast this spell, I don't know. I feel like I'd more often, if I see a dice roll on my spell that I cast, I'm more often going to be the one who wants to make that die roll.
I feel like with everything else going on in this spell, you really don't even care at that point that much about that.
especially since at that point the D4 or whatever die you roll is just fucking bookkeeping. That's not
Yeah.
even like the big effect of this spell, like as far as the players are concerned.
I honestly would be fine removing that entire paragraph. I'd still be okay with this spell. My main thought of this spell was using someone's shadow as espionage.
Yeah, honestly, I think that removing that whole paragraph, I think that's probably totally fine because then they still have to deal with the shadow that's attached to them. So like,
and
yeah.
it makes it less obvious because the way I'm thinking of it now is every time you go down to like sit to rest, you like are obviously not being able to, and so you know something is wrong with you. If your strength's feeling a little wonky and like you feel off a little bit, sure, it's harder to like figure out what that is, but
yeah, my main thing is that if we do remove that paragraph, we'd have to create other ways to determine that this is happening to you, because
I mean the disadvantage on all of the strength things.
That whole paragraph would remove that.
Sean's saying that remove that whole paragraph. What if you give the affected creature a save at the end of every day? No, I guess it wouldn't be a save, but it would be a perception check.
I like just keeping the strength disadvantage on there and just removing just the regaining hit points thing.
Yeah.
Just because the regaining hit points is the thing that makes me as a player feel very, very bad if I had this.
Right. Well, and disadvantage, and we were talking about removing the disadvantage on attack rolls. If it's disadvantage on strength ability checks and strength saving rows, strength saves are super, super uncommon. And the only strength ability check is athletics.
Yeah.
So those are both niche enough that I think that's basically a ribbon, but it gives the player a way to notice that something is wrong if they are affected by this spell.
Yeah.
So I mean, even if it is disadvantage on attack rolls, I'm a little concerned about no concentration until dispelled, disadvantage on attack rolls, but
or just half of the hit points you regain instead of the least amount.
Yeah, I mean, there's any number of ways you can dial this back, so that it feels a little better. I wasn't too concerned about the feeling bad thing because like there are so many effects in the game that the DM uses that reduces maximum hit points, for instance, and that fucking sucks. And effects that give exhaustion and any effect the DM's going to do against the players gonna suck, and that's just part of the game.
I think there's still scales to that though.
I don't think this is one of the worst ones though. Like I fucking hate exhaustion. Exhaustion
means nothing to me.
Exhaustion sucks.
I don't mind exhaustion nearly as much as I would mind this.
I guess it's just a personal experience thing, but like having exhaustion, for instance, in Curse campaign, I fucking hate it. I hate it so much. Here's the deal though. Okay, your character doesn't make nearly as many ability checks as I do. If you're someone who relies on ability checks, like if you're a fighter who's a grappler, or if you're a rogue or a ranger, it sucks because all the things you're supposed to be good at are terrible.
What if instead of disadvantage on attack rolls, you just gave it the Ray of Enfeeblement effect of half damage on strength attacks?
That might be better.
What if you just give them permanent one level of exhaustion?
Permanent one level of exhaustion.
But that's not what shadows do. The thing here is that shadows sap your strength, and so it's affecting your strength.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to emulate. It's rough because disadvantage is, in a lot of situations, disadvantage on attack rolls is worse than minimum damage, but in a lot of situations, it's also the other way around. With the monsters later on in the game.
Well, but also if this isn't put on a marshal, then it doesn't really matter either way.
Yeah, it only affects not even half of the characters you affect. It affects like a fourth because half the marshals are Dex characters.
Right. That's the thing. This is going to affect barbarians, paladins, and strength fighters. Well, and strangers if you are brave enough to build a stranger. But
well, it only affects half of fighters, paladins, and
right. That's the
those
thing.
two.
If you build a Dexident, right? So strength-based fighters, strength-based paladins, strength-based rangers, and barbarians. Whereas almost all other marshals, are using Dex.
Personally, I like the decrease in your hit points that you get back. I just think that it's too extreme.
I was thinking of the situations where you get healed. With hit dice, you get your con back no matter what. So you're really only losing about 3 HP per roll, and then
shit!
I didn't even see that. I was thinking it was only short rest, like hit dice.
I thought this was only rolling hit dice. I didn't realize that this was also hitting clerics healing you. Okay.
Yeah, that's
never mind. I'm perfectly fine with the text as is.
Wouldn't that make it stronger then though?
It would.
Right, but
in the player's hands at least.
The situations it's affecting are different now. And I wasn't even thinking about the fact that you're getting con on your hit dice rolls. Honestly, what if it regains hit points from rolling dice other than hit dice? That way they're fine on the short rest, but healing doesn't affect them as well.
I'd probably want to do the inverse of that before I did that. I don't know, something about like, because with short rests, it's your constitution that is affecting it versus magic affecting it. And I feel like the idea is the shadow is affecting your constitution, your strength. So flavor wise, I'd prefer to keep it affecting rests and not magic, as opposed to the other way around.
That's what I liked on it. I didn't even realize that it was healing. I thought it was just hit dice. I like it on just hit dice. But even on just hit dice, this like minimum on that feels really bad to me.
Well, as I was saying, like when it comes to hit dice and a lot of modes of healing, first of all, at this level there's the spell. Well, I think heal is 7th level.
6.
I don't know, which is just a flat number. There is no roll. And then with hit dice and cure wounds and healing word, all of those rely on adding your spellcasting modifier or your constitution modifier. So there's still a good chunk of healing you get even with the minimum, as opposed to the flat roll. Like you're not rolling 4d8 and then getting 4, which is extremely unlikely if you're rolling 4d8 versus, and it's something that, again, the moment the PCs heal anybody that has this effect, they're like, what's going on? I detect magic or something like that. Boom. There's a problem and how to fix it. Like, it's only going to affect you a couple of times. This is extremely easy to beat at 11th level when you get 6th level spells. And the healing is the healing and the disadvantage are the two ways to detect that's even happening to you.
Then I think take it off just for the fact that makes it too easy to find. I think this should be harder to find.
Sure. I mean, this harkens back to what Adam said, is that Adam felt like for a demon to put this on players, it was mean, and this was part of the way for me to mitigate that. I didn't want there to be such an easy way to just always know what the players are doing at all times. Because that would kind of suck. But like I said, this is going to affect you at most for a day. You're gonna start having this advantage, or you're gonna start not getting the full healing. You're like, what's going on? Can I detect magic or remove curse? And if you do, the shadow comes out, or it's a spell magic. The shadow comes out, and then boom, you fix the problem. This is far more useful, I think, in the player's hands than it is in the DM's hand for that reason, if it's used correctly. But you're right, maybe it's too easy to detect if you want to use this well as a DM.
And if you use this as a player on somebody who then later gets attacked by the shadow, that's kind of like off screen for you.
What do you mean attacked by the shadow? The shadow, the shadow is not going to do anything. And I should make that more clear in the text, I realized. But the shadow's not doing anything until it's detected. Or until it's removed, I should say.
What Zach's saying is that when they do discover it, cast Dispel Magic, and then fight the shadow, that's off screen to the players. So the players don't see the consequences of that fight. But the thing is, when you're 11th level, a shadow is CR 2, right? For a shadow?
I think I'm pretty sure it's like CR1 or like 1/4.
Yeah, that's the thing. A shadow poses no real threat to the enemies you're facing at this level. Unless you're casting this on like a civilian, in which case it will probably kill them. But
yeah.
So then you're just trying to cast this to get the seeing for a day.
That is the
Well,
no. As a player, using this spell against an NPC, it's far less likely for certain NPCs to detect this thing than it is for players.
Right, because NPCs are getting in combat way less than you are. They're not going to notice disadvantage on attack rolls and saving throws and
or
minimum healing. Like the thing that they'll notice is disadvantage on athletics checks, but even then, like the average NPC, how many times a day are they making an athletics check? You know, like this is going to last longer on a like not even necessarily a civilian, but a non-combatant NPC.
What I will say though, even if it does only last for a day, that's still far longer than scrying.
Right, and the scrying, every time you use it, they get a chance to like resist it, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, by the end of this spell, you've made me feel weird about all parts of it.
It is a pretty weird spell. It is meant to be pretty weird.
As much as we've argued about it, I do like the whole package a lot. It's just, it's doing a lot of things that nothing else has tried to do, and I wasn't sure how I felt about some of them.
To me, it still feels like it's pulling in too many different ways, but
I'd say that's my biggest criticism of it, is that it feels like it's doing not even too much.
No,
I was gonna say not even too much in terms of power, just too many things. But like everything, like you've defended every part of this, I think. Well, I think I agree with you about basically every part of this now. It's just I still feel kind of weird about it. I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on it. I like I said, I like the whole package evocatively, and you've defended it line by line. I just still feel kind of weird about it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure why.
Hey, I'm gonna be honest. There's a lot of spells in the game that if we had made them, you'd feel weird about it. I'm gonna be quite honest.
Yeah, there are definitely spells where
like Dream of the Blue Veil, for instance.
I love Dream of the Blue Veil, but it just is not applicable to 95% of campaigns.
Yeah,
like
it's a very weird spell.
Super weird. I love it though. It feels like the sort of spell that should have been published in a module, not in a source book.
But I'm willing to move on from this.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I think the next spell is actually Sid's, if Sid's here.
Nice provocative spell, Shawn.
Thank you. My next one's also very provocative.
Shawn does design some of the most provocative stuff that we talk about.
I like using words, guys. I like using lots of words.
Oh, sorry. One last, like, tiny gripe.
Oh, sure.
You use creature a lot in that.
Yeah, I mentioned that as I was reading it. I was like, the very first sentence, you curse the shadow of a creature to spy on the creature at the cost of the creature's well-being.
Because you mentioned that, there are so many more. It's
Yeah, I really should have used target to replace creature in a lot of these places, but oh well. Sid's spell here, Spectral Resistance. Adam, since you know the spell, why don't you go ahead and read this one?
Sure thing. Spectral Resistance. This is a 4th level transmutation spell. Casting time and action, range of touch. Components are verbal, somatic, and material. A small piece of clear glass. And the duration is concentration up to a minute. You're able to use your magic to turn the creature's body spectral, appearing saturated and translucent. When you touch a willing creature, they have resistance to slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing damage. I said those in the wrong order. For the duration. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 5th level or higher, you can target one additional creature for each slot level above 4th. So two things here. I don't think that it needs to be a willing creature. If you want to give your enemies resistance to slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning damage, I think you should be allowed to. And the second thing is that the scaling gets a little weird since it's only touch range. So, like, if I cast this at 7th level, I need to be in touch range of 4 creatures to get all of them. I guess I could touch myself, and I do, but it just, I don't know, that the scaling combined with the range feels weird to me. I'm not sure how many touch spells there are that like increase the number of targets.
Yeah.
And yeah, the willing creature is the only other complaint I have here. I also think that this might maybe be
I think it's too high a level.
yeah, I was thinking it's underpowered for its level.
My biggest thing with this is that, yeah, it's underpowered. There is a much better spell called Warding Bond, which I think does a pretty similar thing. You resist all damage, you get a +1 to your AC and saving throws. Though, you also take all the damage as well, so it's not exactly 1-to-1. This is kind of like a 4th level, was it Blade Ward, I think is the cantrip?
Yes.
That you get resistance to all this stuff?
The very bad cantrips.
Yeah, it's not very good. Yeah, Blade Ward. You have resistance against bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage dealt by weapon attacks, which is very specific, actually. I didn't know that was there. By weapon attacks specifically.
Right, because it helps against magical weapons, but not spells that deal bludgeoning.
Yeah, it's very strange.
No, yeah, I think that this is underpowered for its level, so this could probably be brought down to
I feel like 2nd at least.
yeah, I think that this would be a good 2nd level spell and kind of weak at 3rd level. I think that either of those is defensible. You would definitely want the scaling to slow down when you bring it down in level.
My suggestion for the scaling is actually if you scale it down to 2nd, every 2 levels that you cast it higher, you can choose an additional damage type to give resistance to.
Ooh, that's a spicy meatball. That is a spicy meatball, but I think I like it. Take it down to 2nd level, and then so if you're casting this as a 4th level spell, you get bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, and whatever elemental type you think is most applicable to the fight. Cast it at 6th level, you get 2 elemental types. That's not nothing, and I don't think it's
still
too much
concentration,
either.
so
It's still concentration. We're removing the ability for you to up the targets, so I think that's probably all right. Shawn, what do you think of that? You look like you're thinking very hard about something.
I was double checking if there was a spell that did this already. I'm pretty sure one of my homebrew spells actually does this. In the same vein as Absorb Elements, which is not exactly the same. But I did want to look at Protection from Energy, which is effectively this just for elemental damage. So if we wanted to look at the comparison there,
it's 1 damage type.
It's 1 damage type, but it's one of the elemental types. So
that's a 3rd level spell, and
it's
it's
a 3rd level spell.
Hour.
Yeah, concentration for an hour. The thing about bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing is that they are a bit more common than all the other damage types. But when you're using protection from energy, you're usually using that when you know there's a threat from one of those energies. So it's about as effective as being resistant to everything. Not exactly, but in a lot of situations it will be. I think 3rd level would be appropriate if we chose one of the damage types. I think 4th level might be appropriate for all 3, though.
Really?
Protection from energy is 3rd level.
Right, but it also lasts 60 times as long.
I guess that's true. You could probably use that in a couple of combats instead of just one.
if you keep the
vers-
concentration up. But you can also prepare it like ahead of time.
Yeah.
Well, and also
Uh,
you can use protection from energy to protect you from like traps. Like if you're in a volcano or something, I don't know, like protecting yourself from the
Mhm.
damage from the lava,
As you go
like
through, yeah.
or cold give yourself resistance to cold damage so that you're not affected by like very cold climate. Like protection
Yeah.
from energy has other out of combat uses that this sort of doesn't.
There's a couple of things that this can get out of combat. Like there are obviously traps, falling rocks if you're by a volcano, like you said, or like falling. Falling does
Yeah.
bludgeoning damage.
I I think I think this at third level I think is probably fine because you're getting more damage types, but it's a shorter duration. Um,
Actually, I think I'm with Shawn on this. I think 4th level.
seriously,
Yeah.
I
Just because you get 3rd level spells at 5th level, that feels really early to get this.
Oh, is that what it is? Primordial.
Uh,
Primordial.
and if you do it at 4th level and you do the scaling, that way you can only go up to 8th level and you can only do 2 extra elemental
okay,
damage.
but the thing is, once you start adding elemental damage types to this, like after the second elemental damage type, it's not going to matter nearly as much.
Yeah.
Like,
I think
I guess
this
even then that scaling wouldn't matter because then you can just do protection from energy. Like,
yeah, remembering that protection from energy exists. That scaling is less exciting to me now.
yeah.
yeah. There's just a
Oh, man.
primordial ward, but that's 6th level, so it's not really that much in the conversation.
Thought
But
it was cool for a second.
but primordial ward is resistance to all of the elemental damage types for 1 minute. Though that
you know
also
what?
has the reaction that gives you immunity to those damage as well.
Well, and you know, protection from energy does include language about the creature being willing. So I guess Wizards doesn't agree with me that you should be able to give your enemies resistance to things. Um,
It's a trap. I'm giving you resistance to this thing.
I think 4th might be the best choice here because I'm looking at primordial ward, which is resistance to all elemental damage types.
Mhm.
It does have a
What about that?
reaction which grants you immunity to the damage type, but once you use that, the spell ends. So you lose all your resistances. So you have to choose between immunity once or resistance continuing. Which I think having a reaction to be immune to a damage type is probably worth a couple of spell slots. And I think being immune to all elemental damage, or resistant, I mean, compared to resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, I think being resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing is more valuable, personally. Because
I think in
almost
a lot of
every
situations it is.
yeah,
Especially at the early levels.
yeah, almost every creature, even if they deal elemental damage types, also deal those types of damage. And not every creature that deals those types of damage deal an elemental damage type. Bludgeoning, piercing, slashing is more applicable to more combats than elemental resistances are.
I have one option outside of that, but first I wanted to ask what you would do for scaling then on this, if at all. Because
I think the only scaling that you can really do to this that's like reasonable is the additional targets.
well, but protection from energy just doesn't scale.
Doesn't scale at all, yeah. Which I hate spells that don't
just
scale.
primordial ward.
Yeah. I hate spells that don't scale. So
Primordial
just
ward is actually self only, but also primordial ward. I think the main thing you're getting out of casting
it is
this
self only.
is at 6th level, which primordial ward is, instead of protection for energy at 4th. I think the main thing you're getting is that you get all 5 damage types.
Yeah, you get all 3 here.
Right, but I'm saying that like the big advantage that primordial ward has over protection from energy is protecting you from a wider variety. Like the reaction to get immunity to one effect is nice, but I think that the bigger thing is the 5 different damage types. I
agree. That's why I'm saying this might be fine at the level that it is.
So my idea is make this 2nd level, and you only get one of these damaging types. Scale it to by 4th, you can get all 3.
My only thing with that is that it would feel more incomplete. Just in that, like, those two damage types being together is very. That's like everywhere in the game. That's just a feeling, though. That there's no mechanical reason why it has to be that way. I don't think. But it does feel weird to separate the three of them because they're always together, basically.
I don't see a way of scaling this really because multiple targets to me in my head you can at max do 2 if it's a one action self or like touch spell.
I mean, you could
No,
maybe get
teleportation is touch. You can bring like 8 creatures with you with touch. Oh no, teleportation I think is like 3 feet. Plane shift. Did I say 3 feet? Like 30 feet. Plane shift I think is touch though. And you could bring like 7 creatures with you.
Lane shift.
Right, but plane shift includes explicit description of how you can get that many creatures to go with you in the spell description. Like,
yeah, you and 8 up to 8 willing creatures who link hands in a circle are transported.
Gotcha.
Well, but also you could feasibly get up to 2 creatures next to you and yourself. Although at that point it gets sort of confusing about how many hands you have. Like,
yeah. That's my issue with the scaling is just.
Well, I mean, you could target like as many creatures as you want as one action when making the attack action. I don't see why you can't touch multiple creatures at once with a spell cast.
No, I'm not saying you
or
can't
in one
do
action.
it. I'm not saying you can't do it. It just feels kind of weird to me. Honestly, I think it's fine if this spell just doesn't scale. Protection from energy doesn't scale. I don't see why this one needs to.
Yeah, and I'd almost say no, that would be too long. Never mind. Let's just say an hour, not a chance. Well, I think 1 minute concentration is good.
I mean, if this is going to be 4th level, maybe an hour is all right.
There's a lot of stuff you can get out of or take less damage from at that point.
Well, right, but like,
especially basic traps and stuff that you would go through that you wouldn't otherwise be able to.
Yeah, but I think that's fine. If you're burning a 4th level spell slot to get resistance to traps, like,
yeah,
I feel like that's probably all right.
I'm sorry, I missed it. What was your suggestion?
Make it an hour.
I was saying that if this is going to be a 4th level spell, an hour is probably fine. An hour is probably not, like, a minute is an entire combat. An hour is probably not going to be 2 combats.
Well, as you said, primordial ward, the meat of that spell is resist to all 5 damage types, and that's a minute as well.
Yeah, also Primordial Ward is only available to druids.
By the way, I was looking. I knew there was precedent for this, but I wanted to check. Enhance ability is a touch spell that scales for multiple targets, starting at level 1, and each level above is an additional target. So there's precedent for it.
Okay, sure. That's fine.
Fly. Fly is also like that.
Cool.
Oh yeah. I'm just not usually upcasting that while in combat, so it's not something I worry about very often.
True.
I don't know. I just feel like the difference between a minute and an hour is negligible here, and I disagree about it being 4th level. So I'm rallying for a buff here.
I think 4th level makes the most sense when comparing to protection from energy and primordial ward. And I do believe that these damage types are better to resist against than one element or even all of the elements at once. If it was like comparing it to like radiant necrotic, that would be different. But I think, like I said, bludgeoning, slashing, piercing up here in almost every combat. It is useful in almost every combat, whereas protection from energy will be useful in combats where you specifically know they're going to be dealing a damage type. Like a dragon, like this would probably be preferable.
I don't know.
It's
It,
comparable.
it feels very weird to me that we're saying that a concentration 4th level spell should get you approximately 1/3 of what a 1st level class feature does.
I don't see a problem with that. Class features can be strong as fuck.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think this is on. I think 1 minute and 4th level is fine. I'm weird about the higher levels, but that's just a myself in my mind thing. Um, I think it's good where it's at.
I disagree, but it sounds like I'm not convincing you guys.
This is Sid's spell, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a Sid spell.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've heard the suggestions, or if you rewatch it, you can see them if you're not watching. But that's what we think.
I understand what you're saying, Adam, and it is tweaking something in my mind. But I still think that 4th level. I think I think I'm still most comfortable there. I might think about that more later, but right now that is where I'm sitting.
I think it's possible that it could be fine at 3rd, but I think it would be a high tier 3rd level spell.
I think because just the fact that where protection of energy is, it just makes sense to me that this would be stronger than that. But that I get why this being like a 1st level feature, it is weird, but I don't know. I still feel that way.
Okay.
But I'm willing to move on. Which
I'm ready to move
I
on.
think it's Zach's next spell.
It is.
All right, we got Life Beam. Oh, 9th level. Okay. All right, we got Life Beam here.
Yep, this is Life Beam. 9th level Necromancy. Cleric, Druid, Sorcerer, Wizard. Casting time, 1 action. Range, 90 feet. Components, verbal, somatic, and material. Any item worth at least 5,000 gold. Item is consumed. Duration, instant. You siphon your own life, beginning to age as you summon a powerful magical beam from the heavens. Roll 1d10 and the following effects happen. You age equal to the d10 roll. Pick one target within range. They make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, take 4 times the amount of the d10 roll and deal that many d8s in force damage. On a successful save, the target takes half damage.
So
they take 4 times the amount the D10 rolled, and all of that's in force damage.
Yes.
Okay. So you're rolling anywhere between 4 and 40 d8s in force damage. This is pretty weak for a 9th level spell. Like, on top of how swingy it is, you're dealing on average 5 or 6 d8 in force damage. Also, beam attacks should be a dex save, in my opinion. I just think that rolling a die to determine how many damage dice you use just makes this way too swingy. Because 40 d8 is Meteor Swarm d8s or d10s?
I think it's d6s. Pretty sure it's 20 d6 of each.
Okay, so 40 d8 is a bit stronger than Meteor Swarm. Meteor Swarm is very powerful, but 40 d8 is the outside chance very best outcome of this. If you roll 4 d8 for this, that is equivalent to a 2nd level spell, and you aged a year to cast it, and you spent 5,000 gold on an item. I dislike how swingy this is. I'd be all right with the swinginess if the bottom was better. Like if it bottomed out at being worth a 6th level spell, and the top end was, honestly, maybe even the top end can stay where it is, because Meteor Swarm is already the largest damage spell in the game. Like, maybe 40 d8 is a fine place for it to top out.
What if I changed the 4 times to just a flat number?
I was going to suggest, instead of rolling a d10, you could roll, I hate d4s, but you could roll 4 d4s, which average to 10, minimum 4, max 16, so it's not like super bad.
Well, and Meteor Swarm is AoE, so this is single target, so it can afford to be more damage. Like fucking 16 D8 rods from God. That's on average what 96 damage.
Well, it's 16d8 plus 64 force damage because it's
Wait,
4
what?
times the number rolled plus d8's equal to number rolled.
No.
Yes.
No, that's not what it is.
That is what it is.
I'm sorry, what?
Take 4 times the amount rolled, and
Oh my God, I was interpreting that sentence as just telling you how many dice to roll.
oh yeah, no, it's both the damage and you roll that many dice.
That's very confusing.
That is a lot of dice, though. If we did the 4d4 and you got a 16, it'd be 64d8.
Yeah.
It's a lot of d8s.
That's a lot of D8s.
To be
That's
fair,
like-
Meteor Swarm is 40d6, but and it's AoE, so
Yeah.
Right.
But Meteor Swarm is the fireball of level spells. It is meant to be like busted high.
Yeah. I like what this is trying to do thematically.
Yeah.
I just feel like the way it's written right now, it's way too swingy. Its top end is good, but its top end is not good enough to make up for how bad it bottoms out at.
I like the D4 option.
The D4 option would control the swinginess by a lot. And the minimum will be 4, the max will be 16, but more than often you roll between 8 and 12.
I think at that point, though, you're running into an issue of the mechanical process of resolving this spell.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, Meteor Swarm takes a ton of dice, but it's D6s, which you can buy from Chessex, a box that has, I think, 50 D6s in it. So, like, you can buy for $10 a box from Chessex that has all the dice you need to resolve Meteor Swarm. You can't buy D8s in bulk easily. Most people aren't going to have 64 of them. You might not have 64 D8s at an entire table.
What conundrum the spells come up with?
It is quite the conundrum. I obviously the first thing I saw, and I think you recognized it too, Zach, that the swinginess was a problem, which is why you probably added the 4 times the number rolled thing. And that is obviously because it would feel really bad to cast a spell in level 1. It'd feel so bad.
Yeah, it would.
And obviously the D4 is supposed to fix that, but it's one of those situations where it's like, should you be fixing what's there or reworking it?
Yeah.
I like the idea of expending your age in spell. Obviously, to a druid, that means nothing. But
if we want to keep the swinginess in some aspect, what if we let it deal D20s in damage?
D20s in damage? That's certainly breaking some precedents.
Right. But what if you're like, oh, okay, so you age, I don't know, what if we make the aging a flat number? Like you age by 10 years, and then you deal 5d20 force damage to a single target.
5d20?
I don't know.
An average of 55?
That's actually pretty low. That's what a 5th level spell should deal on average. So like
10d20.
10d20? Like
at that
on average, you're dealing 110.
If you really want to get swinging, make it a D100. 2 D100s.
Oh my god.
Average 100 damage.
But at that point, I think we're playing into
that would be fun.
The part of the spell that is problematic. Like
as much as I do low end at that point, yeah.
That's the thing, because it's like, oh, I cast a 9th level spell slot. I aged 10 years, and I dealt 5 force damage.
Yeah.
Oh, and he made his save. Make that 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. The D4s I think would solve the swinginess and the minimum damage.
I like the D4s, but I do think they get finicky and a little bit too wordy and jumbled, adding that many dice.
Having to roll that many D8s is just
it's a lot of D8s.
I like the D20. That would be fun.
I mean, D12s are also pretty swingy.
Mhm.
It could just be like a large number of D12s, right?
Yeah, but are you getting into the same issue of like people don't have D12s?
Well, right, but we wouldn't be rolling 64 D12s. Like,
What you could do, so instead of D4s, you could do 2D6. And then instead of rolling more dice with the D6, just do a flat multiplication to that number. So like that number times, I don't know, 20. So it'd be between 40 damage and 240 damage. Okay. That's a lot of damage. But it would average 140.
That's still pretty high.
and that's the thing. 140 is actually almost double the recommended single target save half damage for a 9th level spell.
Then times 10, perfect. Then it's then it's between 20 and 120 with an average of 70.
Like 70-ish.
But 70 feels low because isn't like disintegrate, which is 6th level, like 78 plus 40 or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's Finger of Death that you're thinking about.
Finger of Death, sorry, yeah.
10 D20s. 10 D20s. You age 10 years and you do 10 D20 in damage.
As much as I like the numerical theory crafting of, well, what's a swingy a way that we could do this that isn't like completely insane, I'm not sure that the swinginess is what we should be trying to preserve in this spell.
That's what I want.
Yeah. Also, just to address something that Adam said earlier, the 2 beam spells that exist in the game are both con saves.
Really?
Yeah, Moonbeam and Sunbeam are both con saves. Surprisingly, the only 2 beam spells, and they're both astronomically themed.
This feels more like to me more like Flame Strike than it does like Moonbeam. And I think Flame Strike is a dex save.
Yeah, it's coming from the heavens, dude. It's a smiting ray.
Yeah, it's not coming.
It's like the end of This Is the End of the World, where like the blue lights come down and rapture people.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I have a very similar spell to this that I was making for the cleric, which is basically Meteor Swarm for the cleric. But
I do like your habit of making cleric spells that are adaptations of like the busted stuff that wizards get to do with 9th level spells.
Hell yeah, dude! I love Miracle. I like the idea of randomly determining how much you roll, but I hate the idea of rolling low on that and getting fucked so much. I would probably never take this. Well, I'd probably take it once, and then once it failed, I'd be like, "Fuck this spell, never again."
This spell, for how little text this has, it's got good bones. I like what you're trying to do here, but I really hate what you're trying to do here.
Well, because I like the idea of gambling your life, so you had to roll for how much life you're getting rid of in order to do this much damage.
I have an idea.
And that's why I didn't make it a flat age number.
Instead of it being single target, you roll to see how many targets you hit.
Ooh. So
and there's no save.
Roll a d6 for how many targets you hit. No save, and it deals. Since it's no save, it would need to be a kind of low damage amount.
Yeah,
but like,
which I think makes it more reasonable with multiple targets.
I think 10d8 with no save.
So
is there any age loss in that?
Yeah,
yeah.
I
the
think,
number you roll.
I think so like d6 roll, or I mean any die really, but I think d6 gives you like reasonable numbers. D6 age that many years, choose that many targets, 10d8 force damage.
It's not the same spell. It's not the same spell that I'm imagining at that point.
Okay,
I don't think those are bad suggestions. It's just not the spell that I'm thinking of at that point.
I think it's this. Well, at least in my mind, it's the same spell, but more of it.
Are you intending? Are you basically
like a rapture?
I wanted it to be single target.
Single target. Okay. If we want to keep the single target and we want to keep the age thing, you. My issue with the die, the only way we could do the age thing is the die roll, because my other suggestion would be willingly sacrificing age. But like, if you're a druid or an elf or something, that's such an arbitrary, like, oh yeah, I'll just give 50 years, fuck it. Which I feel like isn't good.
Man, I really don't know what needs to be done here. That's not true. I know what needs to be done here. I don't know how to do it without sacrificing the heart of this spell.
Yeah, there's definitely a heart here that throws you off.
Yeah.
I do think changing the die to something less swingy than a D10, because that could go from 1 to 10, and if you roll a 1, you're gonna hate yourself. I think no fucking costly material component. I think like that will always feel bad. Half of the time it's gonna feel really bad. And yeah, something a less swingy roll, like a 2d6 or
you can kind of treat the years off of your life as the costly component here.
Like, yeah, basically.
Yeah. That's fine. I only added that because there's certain like beings, druids, stuff like that age actually doesn't matter. So
yeah,
but also once you're casting 9th level spells, the campaign's not going on for much longer anyways. Fair. So like, even if you use this in every combat after you get it, you're proccing this like 4 times maybe.
Yeah.
Like,
and then
what did you think of the flat damage, or just no flat damage added to the front end of it?
I think there should probably be. I'm trying to think. Okay, let's just assume it's 2d6. It's 2d6, and we don't want to feel awful. Then we want rolls of 5 to still feel good. Because that's like within 1 standard deviation of the mean. So if you want rolls of 5 to still feel good, but still under, like, a little underpowered maybe, what is the suggested average damage for a 9th level spell?
Single target save halves.
Yeah.
83.
83? So we probably want to do like 60 damage on a 5. So to get 60 damage on a 5,
you'd need 2d12 for each number.
Yeah. I think that could work. If you did, saying 2d12 per feels a little off. A d20 would obviously be the mediation there.
We're back to the d20s, baby. D20s for damage rolls in 2021. That's my goal. Well, maybe 2022 might take us a while,
but we can do it with this spell. I believe in us, guys.
Well,
because I wrote this spell back when we were doing the spooky episode, so I don't fully remember everything about what I was writing about it.
So... I think the only thing that we need to do with the spell is figure out how to tweak it to make it feel pretty okay the majority of the time. Which I think is something maybe we could do off stream instead of just sitting here trying to map it out.
We have identified for the folks viewing at home what we think the problem with the spell is. And the solution for this spell is going to be a lot of fiddling with math and spreadsheets. So I don't think our viewers want us to do that on camera.
Kurt said druids are OP with this. They don't age by level 20. Yeah, we know. But it also doesn't make them OP. It just makes them the most viable people to use this spell. Which I guess, because Meteor Swarm is still a really strong spell that these classes get, and you're probably going to want to take that most of the time over this because of the AoE and the massive damage. And if you're not an elf or a druid or a monk, even if you're a monk, because you still age, you just don't show it. Monks don't get spells, right? Why don't you include them? Elves or druids?
Monk 9th level spells.
Or half elves. Like, this means like nothing to you.
Shawn, I want to live in your world where monks get 9th level spells. My God.
Hey, they get one 9th level spell. They get astral projection. They can cast only on themselves.
That's true. That's true.
And I would consider their version of greater invisibility a 9th level spell. It's pretty fucking strong. Great invisibility, no duration, resistance to all damage while it lasts. Ridiculous. I think we should move on from this. I think we need to turn some dials to get this to still fit.
Yeah,
But
that's fair.
that's it. I'm just gonna get through this last spell. It's my shortest spell. We're a little bit over time, but I just want to get this done. I want to leave another spell behind again, so I'm just gonna go right through it. Nightmare, 6th level enchantment, bard, warlock, wizard, 1 action, 60-foot range. Vocal somatic material, and the material is a fine glass dust. Concentration up to a minute. You infect the mind of a creature that you see within range into having a hostile nightmare. One creature of your choice within range must make a wisdom saving throw or be afflicted by this nightmare. A creature that's incapacitated automatically fails this save. The nightmare devours the target's mind, manifesting itself to the target as a form beyond the target's understanding. At the start of each of the target's turns, it takes 4d10 psychic damage and must make a wisdom saving throw. A creature that is incapacitated automatically fails this save as well. On a success, the nightmare ends. The target mistakes the nearest creature can see as the hostile form in its nightmare, and it is compelled to kill it until the end of its turn, or until the end of the turn. And then higher levels, you just target more creatures. Yes, Justin, we see you.
Today's food of the day is cheese balls. They're a great snack.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure they're pretty bad for you, but that's Nightmare.
Four, 4d10 psychic. 40. The only thing that's giving me pause about this is the fact that when you succeed on the saving throw, you're then forced to try and kill the nearest creature to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's...
Is that whether you have it on you originally, like have it on you and then succeed, or when it's first used on you and succeed?
When you have it on you and then you succeed.
Okay. Is there anything else that does anything like that?
There is one spell and I can't find it. Or something like that. Not exactly the same, obviously.
Yeah, that part feels weird to me, but it feels less weird when I think about it in terms of, like, you've already failed the initial saving throw, and this is just the, like, sort of capstone's the wrong word for it, but this is sort of the, like, ribbon on top for this spell. Like, yeah, it's doing 4d10 psychic damage per turn until it ends, and then you have to spend your turn trying to attack whatever the nearest creature is, which that isn't even always going to be an ally. Like, that's not even always going to trigger in a way that is super beneficial for the person casting this. So I don't think it's, like, overpowered or anything. It just feels kind of weird to me.
It is weird in the framework of I succeeded, but I'm still being affected.
Right.
But as you said, that's like the way I think about it is that you failed the save against that effect. The damage is just the intermediary between those two things.
So this was something that Zach was asking about. I feel like you should maybe add language to the first paragraph saying that a creature that succeeds on this saving throw is unaffected by the spell. Because there is a reading where if you succeed on either the initial or one of the repeated saves, then this thing happens. And it's only supposed to be on the repeated saves. And so I think that something clarifying that this is only for a creature afflicted by the original nightmare.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not as hung up by that right now. Just what the damage of this is. How do you get to 4d10?
It's following the same like phantasmal killer, phantasmal, or like weird and stuff like those spells. Because this is very similar to phantasmal killer as far as like uh the way it comes to being. In fact, I'm not sure why I chose enchantment over illusion. But like phantasmal killer starts. You tap the nightmares of a creature you can see within range. The creature loses any manifestation of its deepest fears, visible only to that creature. And then each of its turns it takes 4d10 psychic damage if it fails its save. So I just took the damage straight from that. It's a 4th level spell. This is essentially a phantasmal killer, but it still affects creatures that are immune to frighten, and it has an additional effect at the end. That's the only difference. Those are the only differences. Otherwise, it's kind of identical.
Right, and Phantasmal Killer
Actually,
scales with...
Phantasmal Killer also imposes frightened if they're not immune to frightened. This has nothing to do with frightened whatsoever.
Right.
So you can still act as you wish. Just you'll have that psychic damage happening.
And Phantasmal Killer scales its damage instead of scaling targets. But
yeah,
that almost makes me feel like you can lower the spell level in this.
I don't want to do that because it does automatically succeed on incapacitated creatures. Which I mean, that's if you incapacitate a creature, that creature's pretty boned. But like that is pretty strong to be able to just make a creature auto fail your save.
Sure.
This would allow you to like kill a creature that's like dying or kill a creature that's sleeping pretty well. And that additional effect at the end, I think, warrants the 6th level. Because if you get this on like the Barbarian, for instance, that could be pretty fucky. Or actually the Spellcaster. Because the Spellcaster's going to try and kill the next person, and you're probably not the closest person to the Spellcaster's probably one of their allies.
yeah, I think
that's fair.
I think this is fine at 6th level with the numbers as is. I think the wording needs clearing up.
No, I agree. I should add that effect at the beginning, or that word at the beginning that clarifies that you're not affected by the spell. Well, actually, I apologize. The wording is clear because it says one creature of your choice within range will succeed on a saving throw or be afflicted by this nightmare. And that final passage is on a success, the nightmare ends, and the target mistakes the nearest creature as the nightmare.
Right. I don't think that this wording is wrong, but I think that it deserves extra clarification.
Sure.
The other thing that I was going to ask was, honestly, how easy is it for players to inflict incapacitation?
Stunning Strike.
That's the only thing I can think of other than knocking them unconscious.
Stunning Strike, Hold Person,
Hold Person incapacitates?
It paralyzes, which also imposes incapacitation.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Then I think this is good at 6th level. I think.
Yeah. Nice, clean, concise. I just had a few of those questions. I think it's fine though.
This one is not nearly as controversial as Lurking Shadow. You only succeeded in provoking us with one of your 2 items this week, Shawn. I think you might be losing your touch.
Whoops.
Although you did get me really heated with Lurking Shadows. So. Oh no, I do have one more question.
Okay.
Why isn't this on the cleric spell list?
Because Phantasmal Killer's not.
Phantasmal Killer isn't on the Bard or Warlock lists either.
That's true. It's not. I don't know. I didn't really cross my mind to put it on there, I guess.
Okay. No further questions.
I know. This doesn't fit the cleric flavor to me.
Because it's not necromancy.
I agree with you on that, Shawn. I just wanted to ask a question.
Well, that does mean that all 3 of my spooky spells were 6th level. It was an Easter egg that was supposed to come out the first thing. I was like, oh, 666. Woo! That's it. That's the last spooky spell. All the spooky spells like Nightmare, Lurking Shadow, Life Beam, and Dancing Radiance.
I made this spell before you told me what spells we were using for this.
So I have an idea for what we could do next week.
Oh shit.
It's-
Again,
it's
we
a
should
li-
discuss this before the podcast, but yeah,
we,
go on.
we should have, but I only had this idea like 30 seconds ago.
Okay.
So my idea, and this is kind of the vaguest idea that we've worked with so far, it leaves a lot of room
Interesting.
for interpretation. I would like for us to come up with things that make it matter a little bit more what weapon you're using.
Oh, I've been
Whether-
working on something like that for a while, actually.
Whether that's, I don't know, like reworking the weapon table to give weapons certain properties, or coming up with spells or abilities that require a certain type of weapon or a certain damage type. Like, just come up with something that makes it matter a little bit more what weapon you're using. Something that makes me care whether I'm using a longsword or a rapier. Like, something that makes me want to use something that looks at first blush to be suboptimal. Like, make it matter. That's what I want.
Like a
Are
feet
you-
weapon or something.
Are you gonna redo the table, Adam?
I probably not, but that feels like the easy way out to me for this
There-
question.
There was a thing
The
that
easier.
there's a thing that I'm working on. It's a slow process, but I want every martial weapon to have a bonus action attached to it that you can use.
Interesting.
um,
Okay,
And only if you're proficient with the martial weapon.
sure.
That way, proficiency in certain martial weapons might be useful and might make certain feats that are in the game more useful.
Like Weapon Master.
Yeah, like Weapon Master. Or like if you are a class or a race that gets proficiency in a specific martial weapon, you have access to that or something like that, even if you're like a wizard or something.
Right. Yeah. No,
That's something I've been working on for a while. It's
that's cool.
hard. But
I mean, but like totally, like bringing a couple of those next week would totally fit what I have asked for here.
Hell yeah.
So
yeah,
I like this idea a lot, but this doesn't seem easy.
no, I don't think it's easy, but like I said, I only came up with this about a minute ago, and so I didn't really have time to come up with a way to make it easier. So this is what we get. We should really talk about this before we go on air next time.
yeah.
Too late, we're doing it.
So a couple of things you could do. You could do a feat about a specific weapon. You could do a spell about specific kinds of weapons. You could do a monster that like maybe can only be affected by a certain kind of weapon, or like uses a specific kind of weapon in a specific way or something.
You could come up with a variant class feature that cares about what kind of weapon you're using.
That'd be very interesting, yeah. Like Sneak
You-
Attack cares about finesse, for instance.
Right, or you could come up with a race that gives you an extra ability on certain weapons. Like maybe you're a Triton who can do special stuff with a trident. I don't know, maybe.
That'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool.
Just, yeah. That's
Anything like
Endless
that.
possibilities.
I think that there's a ton of ways that you could do this, and I'm excited to see us come up with a lot of like completely different stuff, as opposed to, oh, we've got 5 spells this week, or oh, we've got 4 subclasses. Like,
Watch us all come with stuff with the same weapon.
and this is why we also should talk off air about what we're coming up with.
Yeah. So we'll
Alright.
we'll have better communication off air. In the meantime,
In the meantime, this has been the Lost Leisures. Was there any last words you guys had?
word
Oh,
of the day.
Yes, the word of the day, I closed the tab. So the word of the day is parsimonious. I don't remember what parsimonious means. I think it means that you're like stingy.
Started with a P. Just
You,
what I
you did
wanted.
ask, oh, parsimonious, unwilling to spend money or use resources, stingy or frugal. Parsimonious.
The exact opposite of penance, which also starts with a P.
Yes.
What would the opposite of parsimonious be? Like flippant?
I think the opposite of parsimonious would be generous.
Generous? Yeah. I guess penance is very generous in his use of spell slots.
With parsimonious in particular, I think there's a
connotation.
connotation
Yeah.
of being sort of miserly, sort of greedy almost.
Makes sense.
But I think that generous or free flowing,
And remember, things that must be found should be
No,
remembered.
you,
That's not how
you
it goes.
got
Things
that
that are
wrong.
lost must be found, and things that are found must be remembered.
See you next week.
See you next